Moonlight pours like milk over the desert, softening every edge until the dunes look like sleeping whales. We move without hurry, feet brushing sand that sighs at each step, toward a shape that rises from the earth as if it grew there, the Temple of Hathor. Night keeps its voice low. Far off, a dog barks once and falls silent again. In the courtyard, torches tremble in their brackets, painting the stone with gold, as if the walls were remembering. We pass columns banded with shadow and flame. Faces of gods watch from the capitals, smiling, stern, amused. The air tastes of dust and resin, the afterbreath of incense, and a moth taps at the torchlight like a drummer. The camera of your mind glides ahead, through the doorway into the hypostyle hall, where the ceiling waits like a calm sea with stars trapped beneath it. Tilt upward, the stone sky blooms. Here are animals that sail across eternity, a lion stepping through time, a crocodile with a secret in its grin, a serpent tied to the hours like a ribbon. Boats drift along currents, carrying deities whose names feel older than sleep. There are constellations you know by shape if not by name, others that refuse to match what textbooks promised. Between them turn seasons, winds, and the clockwork of the world. We are told this is only myth hammered into limestone, a calendar for priests, a map for festivals. Yet something in the arrangement hums, as if the ceiling listens back. Why, then, would anyone whisper that a zodiac here is forbidden? Who decided what the sky may or may not say? Perhaps the answer is politics, dressed as piety. Perhaps it is a gate kept shut because it opens both ways. Stone remembers what mouths forget. Up on the Dendora ceiling, the rams, crocodiles, and scarabs are not decorations. They are verbs. Each presses time forward, each repeats with patient certainty. The ram breathes, and spring arrives. Barley nods. The river loosens. The crocodile sinks and returns, proving disappearance is only another phase. The scarab rolls the sun like a glowing pearl, and morning is remade from yesterday's husk. The priests who once stood beneath this stone sky treated it as a living instrument. They read horns and tails like a sailor reads winds, setting rituals to the heavens' tempo. When to bless fields, when to crown a king, when to light lamps for dawn, these answers hid in the animals. The ceiling spoke in the grammar of cycles: flood, sowing, harvest, birth, marriage, coronation, rising, waning, return. But cycles are honest, and honesty can be dangerous. The same signs that welcome rain also tell when waters will fail. The constellations that announce a ruler's season also measure the shadow lengthening behind him. Some sequences close like a fist, others open a door you would rather keep shut. It is one thing to promise renewal. It is another to predict the hour of unmaking with the same serene voice, so the ceiling would not be silent. Even when empires changed script and soldiers redrew borders, these beasts walked loops, repeating what they knew. Nothing lasts, not even endings. You can smooth a name from a cartouche, you can repaint a god's face, but the circle turns its quiet wheel. Perhaps that is what earned the whisper of forbidden, not blasphemy, but certainty. Our guide's lantern drifts, and the light gathers along a band of carved waves. A boat waits there, oars tucked, as if listening. Figures ride within it, faces turned toward the deep. We breathe in, and, as the lantern steadies, the vessel seems to lean slightly forward. We step after it, into the current of stone. Maps were once stories you could tell around a hearth, yet steer by at dawn. On the Dendera ceiling, journeys unfold as lessons in timing. A boat pushes from west to east, and with each glide another slice of night rises. Months, decans, pre-dawn stars. The crew are gods, but their cargo is ours. They ferried the world from yesterday toward a narrow landing called morning. Farmers watched these tales, the way sailors study currents. When the jackal appears near the prow, the nights grow shorter. When the falcon perches on the stern, the breath of the river thickens. Myth is not a disguise for truth here. It is a handle. You remember a crocodile better than a number, a scarab better than a list. Tie your seed to the scarab's climb, your harvest to the lion's paws, your prayer to the bright heliacal rise that leaps from darkness like a startled fish. In a land that lives and worries by water, timing decides whether the granaries sing or the door bolts against hunger. Flood late, and barges scrape mud. Flood high, and roofs carry reed bundles like rafts. Families learned to listen for patterns inside the stories. Which star lifts 3 fingers before dawn? Which goddess walks ahead of the new moon? Which invisible marker means wait? Not yet. These were maps made of myths, soft enough to remember, sturdy enough to pass between generations whose calendars were the ceiling and the horizon. Even imperial decrees needed these older signs. Kings bind oaths to what everyone can see. The sky signs do not pick sides. They only keep time. Somewhere in the dark hall, sandals whisper across dust. A priest steps forward, calm as a measured breath, and lifts a polished bronze mirror toward the eastern edge of night. Some nights the temple breathed like a slow animal, and the priests listened for the moment it would change. Not every festival was a staircase climbed in song. Some were ladders lowered into the dark. These were the nights that counted backwards. Sand trickled in tall glass. Water dripped from a clepsydra bowl. A hush moved along the hall as if the stones held their breath. They watched the eastern margin for a star that should rise alone. First spark before dawn. That brief appearance, the heliacal rising, opened a narrow door. 3 days to bless the canals, 2 to close the gates, 1 to set the markers where the flood would bite, and then 0. No time left for talk. Only action with wet feet and rolled sleeves. Asterisk. Other countdowns gathered in the ceiling like warnings. When the dark disk bit the sun, they measured shadows on the flagstones and stepped back in a choreography older than memory. Keep fire, keep silence, keep the children near. When 2 wandering stars leaned close, numbers retreated like a tide from 9 to none, and the court waited to speak the king's name, testing the air. Counting backwards did not mean fear, it meant focus. You do not bargain with a river, but you can meet it at the hour that matters. In the storerooms, lamp oil was tallied, jars were turned mouth down against unlucky dew. The city learned the tempo, stalls closing one by one, prayers shrinking to single syllables, breath drawing in. The high priest drew lines on a wooden board, each marker rung in an invisible hourglass. Around us, torches steadied as if the stone had fixed them. Somewhere, a water clock cleared its slow throat. The countdown thinned to a single digit, and the night leaned forward to listen. Almost smiling. At first it looks like a border, a frame for the sky. But the longer we linger, the line reveals scales, a jaw, an eye that watches its own tail. The serpent swallows the years. Inside its mouth, time keeps walking, but the path returns to where it began, as if seasons were beads passing through a patient throat. Priests called it a mystery and drew it, a coil that closes, a promise that opens. Renewal, yes, the comfort of familiar returns. Yet there is another taste hiding in that curve. When a circle tightens, it can become a snare. A reset is a blessing when the barns are full. It is a risk when the jars ring hollow. A farmer knows this truth without speeches. If the river forgets its height, seed sinks into dust. If it remembers too much, the field becomes a raft. Reset might mean starting over with fewer oxen, fewer loaves, a smaller laugh at supper. He watches the serpent and counts his sacks, wondering which way the coil will turn. A king reads the same emblem with a different pulse in his wrist. The circle can crown him with continuity, declare that his rule completes the pattern. But the circle can also bite. Old orders shed like skins. Crowds gather at gates. A hymn becomes a shout. Revolt, renewal both live under the same scale. Asterisk perhaps, that is why this single creature unnerves and comforts. It promises that nothing is wasted, that endings feed beginnings. It warns that beginnings may have teeth. The lantern runs along its curve, and the hall seems to breathe with it, expanding, narrowing, listening. A low drum rolls somewhere beyond the columns, soft thunder on stone. We step back, and the serpent's loop widens into the full ring of signs. Power dislikes calendars it does not control. A ceiling that speaks in rhythms flood, famine, omen can move grain, armies, and crowds. If a priesthood can tell when the river will rise, and when tempers will bear, they can guide taxes to arrive just before surplus, and mercy just before revolt. That is leverage disguised as astronomy, and leverage invites locks. Asterisk, another reason. Panic is contagious. The same stars that promise planting can hint at endings, and endings travel fast in marketplaces. An eclipse misread becomes a rumor becomes a street with its shutters closed, and trade kneels to fear. Rulers prefer to time dread the way they time parades. If prophecy is a drum, they want the stick. Politics completes the triangle. Kings stake their names to the sky. Priests hold the ledger of ours. Scribes fix both in stone. When the ceiling suggests that cycles turn without permission, someone's signature looks smaller. Restrict the reading. Rename a sign. Call the Zodiac a curiosity rather than a clock. Suddenly fate has a gatekeeper. The word forbidden often means profitable when private. There is tenderness, too, in the urge to hide. A calendar that predicts hurt tempts a crowd to brace for it too soon, to sabotage their own harvest with anxious hands. Better, some say, to muffle the bell and keep the town asleep until the hour itself wakes them. But sleep can be another kind of control, so the ceiling gathers its rumors like incense, obscuring. We are left to ask, forbidden to protect the people, or to protect the powerful from the people's timing? Perhaps both. A sealed library keeps wisdom intact. It also keeps it owned. The drum we heard earlier softens, shifts. It feels closer now, less like ceremony and like a heartbeat you sense through a wall. Torches thin into a narrower hall. We follow the sound, step by measured step, toward the archive room where records breathe in the dark, shelves breathe in the cool, and chords bite softly into clay jars. This is where time is kept like grain. The archive smells of papyrus and beeswax, of ink ground. Lantern light walks the walls. Here the sky is not painted. It is filed, stamped, witnessed. A scribe unrolls a contract and taps the margin where stars live as witnesses. On the third morning after the heliacal rising of Sirius, it reads, "Grain to be delivered from the granary to the quay." The date is not a number. It is a moment the heavens will not misplace. If the barge is late, the excuse cannot be fog or rumor. The star rose. Everyone saw. Therefore the debt stands. Another sheet binds wages to Orion's stride. When the hunter clears the horizon, workers collect their silver. If clouds dim him, the law trusts the rhythm beneath them. Orion is faithful, and so must the paymaster be. Even small promises lean on larger lights. A dowry begins when a decan lifts like a coal in the east. A lease ends when that same ember sinks. The sky keeps score, calm and unbribable. Oaths echo this habit. Priests swear by Sirius for navigation, by Orion for courage, by the decans for vigilance in the long hours. A judge hears testimony under a ceiling painted with these patrons, and the words feel heavier, as if gravity were borrowed from the constellations. Break a promise at the wrong hour and you affront more than a court. You bruise the order that steadies boats and veins. Even rituals anchored to these markers. Lamps are lit when a star touches a doorway stone. Libations stop when another reaches the lintel. Markets open to a drumbeat that answers the same cycle as the flood. The city moves like a clock set by distant fires. A priest slices the seal on a waiting roll. Fibers crackle, and within the quiet hush, a timetable blooms. Here is your first key. Simple enough to tuck under your tongue. Cycles plus thresholds equals power. The Dendera Zodiac is not a horoscope whispering compliments. It is an operating system written in animals and boats. Cycles tell you what repeats. Thresholds tell you when the repeating matters. A cycle is the river remembering its height. The moon stitching and unstitching its silver. Alone, these are lullabies. But a threshold is the intake of breath between notes. The instant Sirius shivers into dawn. The bead of darkness when the moon bites the sun. The hour a wandering star steps across a sacred line. Cross a threshold at the wrong moment, and routine turns into risk. Meet it at the right one, and risk turns into harvest. So the Zodiac becomes a console of levers. Priests learned which sequences predicted openings, canals, coronations, and which warned of closures, markets, temples, mouths. Two-time taxes is two-time obedience. Two-time mercy is to keep a crown. Whoever counts the last 3 beats before the door swings matters. More than whoever owns the door. Conquest tried to erase the manuals, but the skill survived by changing costumes. Greek letters walked the same corridors. Roman calendars borrowed the same stars. Later, astronomers turned myth to math, and still kept the habit of watching for edges. The language shifted. The grammar of thresholds remained. You will see these countdowns in places that pretend to be modern. Ships leave at tides and trading floors glance at opening bells. Engineers wait for windows. Surgeons for golden minutes. lovers for the hush before a yes. Long after Dendera, the rule does not retire. Cycles teach patterns. Thresholds give permission. Hold this key and the ceiling rearranges itself, not as a picture but as a program. Its beasts are subroutines, its boats, timers, its circles, clocks nested in clocks. We are not reading fortunes, we are reading instructions. The torch is dim. Stone melts into a wider dock, and the carved sky dissolves into a living one. Pinpricks of cold fire gathering. We follow them, slow and alert, into the mathematics of night. The Nile keeps 3 clocks, and Egypt learned to listen to all of them at once. One speaks in ledgers and measures. The civil calendar, neat, 12 months of 30 days, with a handful of extra days, stacked like stones at year's edge. Scribes loved this clock. It did not bleed or flood. It moved evenly through harvests and audits, telling officials when to count grain, summon workers, or announce a festival before torches were soaked. A second clock moves with the moon, tender, swelling like the river, and then drawing thin. Priests watched it for rituals that needed breath and shadow, fasts that begin at a new darkness, hymns that bloom under a bright disk, nights when certain doors are opened and others latched. The lunar months drifted like barges cut free, and the people felt that drift in their bones. Sleep, tides of work, marriages that wanted night silver to bless them. The third clock does not care for paper or lamps. It stands outside temple and king, in the star called Soptit Sirius, whose first pre-dawn flicker each year rang Egypt awake, seen by all. That heliacal rising was the country's alarm bell, telling farmers the flood was near, telling administrators to ready canals and storage, telling poets the world would be made new. This was the Southic year, measured not by rooms of power, but by a spark above the eastern lip of the earth. When the three agreed, Egypt moved like a choir breathing together. Taxes arrived with ripe fields. Rituals felt inevitable. A royal decree seemed to lean with the sky, but clocks seldom keep perfect company. The civil calendar, regular as marching feet, slipped away from the moon's wavering steps. Both wandered from Sirius by slow degrees. Anxiety lived in those gaps. Which clock deserved obedience when duty and tide disagreed? Which hour held truth? Officials adjusted, priests interceded, families hedged their bets with offerings and extra ladders against the water. In the end, the bright star settled arguments no courtroom could. Now, as the night thins, the horizon lifts a single wavering spark before dawn. All year, the brightest star vanishes into sunlight, gone the way a fish disappears beneath quick water. The temple waits. Priests mark the days with quiet scratches, whispering to water clocks, checking the eastern margin before sleep has quite let go. The moment has a name, heliacal rising, but tonight it feels simply like a held breath. Sirius returns like a rumor before it becomes a fact, a faint pin near the lip of the world, trembling where night and morning bargain. For weeks, she has traveled hidden in the sun's blaze. Now she slips free for a heartbeat, a silver nail tapping the horizon. That tap is Egypt's start gun. Bells are not rung. The throat of the river will speak for them. The priests raise polished mirrors and read the flicker as one reads a signature. Scrolls lie ready in wicker trays. Measurements will begin. In the city, doors open without shouting. Men take poles to the canal gates. Women count jars and chalk the walls. Children run messages because they feel the quickening in the streets, though no drum calls it out. The star's reappearance means the inundation is near, not today, not tomorrow, but soon enough that a careless delay will cost a roof, a harvest, a season of sleep. The start gun fires softly, and a nation leans forward. Asterisk at the key. A scribe kneels where last year's highest water licked the stone. He sets his reed, notes the date against the star, and writes a calm command in black and red. Barges must be patched, dikes must be watched at dusk, storehouse doors must be mended and numbered. The river loves precision, and the heavens have just provided it. Sirius brightens and fades into daylight, leaving the order to echo. Lanterns are lowered, sandals whisper toward the river stairs. Ink dries as the sun takes custody of the sky, and waterlines etched on keystones come into view at long last. Asterisk the river is a ledger written in water. Each year, when its color deepens and the current fattens, Egypt reads lines in the swell. Too little rise, and grain heads shrink. Too much, and villages sit like islands waiting for oars. Measuring the Nile was not romance, it was mathematics tied to bread. Scribes kept tallies that turned inches into loaves, loaves into taxes, and taxes into salaries and stone. Priests stood near the quays with their mirrors and lists, translating the star's signal into expected height. If the flood matched the forecast, confidence rippled outward. Granaries opened on schedule, barges loaded at the planned banks. Collectors could ask the countryside for what the countryside could spare. A good number made the temple's voice sound wise. Offerings grew richer, prayers warmer, and the city believed the gods listened. But the river remembers its own mind. A stubborn low year turned predictions brittle. Bread prices rose like startled birds. Temple kitchens stretched thin. Officials softened demands or risked doors barred in their faces. Blame arrived on boats with taxes. Had the priests misread the sky? Had the negligence of a single gatekeeper offended a goddess? Complaints nested inside the reeds. A high, unruly year brought different troubles. Fields drowned late, delaying sowing until hands idled uneasy. Walls to guide the water tore like old cloth. Too many fish, too few dry paths. Here again, numbers cut both ways. The model that promised plenty also had to budget repairs. Timber, healers, and mud bricks for homes peeled apart by the flood, so attention sharpened around the act of measuring. Watching the Nile became a public ritual and a quiet rivalry. Eyes leaned over the same stone markers, all awaiting proof written in depth and shadow. Nearby, a notched nilometer glistens in torchlight. The sky, so steady to the human glance, carries a secret motion that only centuries confess. Imagine the Earth as a slow spinning top, its axis drawing a faint circle in space. That wobble is precession, the skies, slow whisper tilting the calendar. Grain by grain, until yesterday's star no longer meets us at the same step of dawn. The heavens keep their places, yet our angle to them drifts, and with it the meaning of a date. In temple courtyards. This drift arrived like a rumor proved true. The star that once greeted a festival now rose a touch late, then later still, as if sighing. Heliacal risings slipped along the year. Decans changed their cue. A lion where a bull had reigned. Priests, precise by habit, felt the floor move under the carpet. Myth had to bend toward math, or risk losing the beat of the river and the city it fed. This was not betrayal. It was maintenance, a tuning of a grand instrument. Stories were retold, so their steps matched the heavens' tempo. A goddess might change which emblem she carries. A king might shift the day he ties his oath to the dawn. Murals took on second meanings, like palimpsests of starlight. The people still saw continuity. The learned saw a careful editing that kept continuity possible. Precession worked in centuries, not seasons, but priests thought in long braids of time. They tended archives where errors were expensive, and corrections took the form of new festivals, revised timetables, and solemn nudges to the year's hinge points. Even the pole star was not forever. It marched a circle, ceding the crown and reclaiming it in epoch. To stand beneath such a clock is to feel both humility and reach, so the ceiling taught patience. The sky changes by almost, then by a little, then by undeniable. Ink dries, doors open. Watchers look up again. Somewhere above the hall, a star map rotates almost imperceptibly. Before clocks had faces, the night wore 36 of them. Along the eastern rim, faint stars queued like patient sparks, each one rising in turn, about the time it takes a kettle to heat, a story to finish, a guard to stretch and look toward home. These were the Deccan's windows before dawn opening, one after another so the dark could be measured without waking the sun. Priests learned their names, the way healers learn pulse and breath. When the first Deccan climbed, a prayer began. At the second, the draft was poured. By the third, the fever should break, or the chant would change its tune. A dose could be timed to a star, and so could a promise. I will return by the fifth light. Stand watch until the seventh. We will open the gate at the ninth, and no sooner. In the garrison. Spears leaned against cool stone, and captains counted by sky instead of sand. A shift ended when a particular ember cleared the temple roof. Another began when its cousin pricked the shoulder of Orion. The men knew which Deccan meant soup, which meant silence, which meant the moment you write your name in the dust and think of home. Rituals found their rhythm here as well. Lamps were trimmed with each ascent. Hymns stepped forward like footprints placed in wet clay. Lovers tucked letters under lintels to be read at the rise of a certain spark. The city moved, not in hours but in stars you could point to and whisper. Now, even the sickroom was gentled by this order. A mother watched the ceiling through the window's lattice, counting softly as the next light rose. Hope became a schedule. Fear, a series of small thresholds one could cross. Outside, the eastern edge brightened by grains, and chance stepped in measured beats. That the trouble begins quietly, with the date that arrives before its star. A festival falls on a dry bank while the flood still thinks it is elsewhere. Scribal tables keep their perfect squares, but the heavens step sideways, and the city feels the seam pull. Bakers mutter about wasted flour. Boatmen shrugged at empty mud. Priests fold their lips around a hymn that starts half a beat too soon. Nothing shatters. Things simply stop fitting. At first, compromise is gentle. Add a feast day here. Cancel a minor right there. Slide a market by the width of it. The civil calendar insists on order like a well-swept courtyard. Yet the lunar and stellar clocks tap the window with different knuckles. People learn to hedge. A bride takes her vows by the moon, the taxman by the month, the farmer by Sirius, and each claims the truest time. But drift grows like a crack in clay. A coronation meant to ride under a certain emblem meets an empty patch of sky. Processions look misplaced. Omens arrive breathless, and confidence thins. Some reigns call for reform, voices low but steady. Add intercalations, they sastitch spare days into the year, until the river and the ledger share a breath again. Align the temple lamps to the star that governs grain. Other reigns prefer the fog. Ambiguity is its own instrument. If time itself is slippery, edicts can slide without friction. Promises can be remembered or forgotten according to the hour a messenger chooses to swear he meant. The crowd cannot accuse the king of missing the proper day, if the proper day is a rumor. In such weather, priests who speak clearly find doors closed to them, and scribes learn to polish silence into policy. Reform, when it comes, is a careful knife. It trims, it rebinds, it asks the city to breathe together again. A council gathers by lamplight, and the wicks burn bright once more. An eclipse arrives seldom enough to feel like a decree. Priests have time to prepare the story, and rulers have time to choose the ending. When the light thins at noon and shadows sharpen like blades, the city looks upward and waits to be told what this means. Meaning is the string that moves the kite. Call it a bad star, and the streets learn to whisper. Markets close early. Petitions pause. A planned appointment becomes a grace period for the palace. Taxes delayed sound merciful. A purge wrapped in ritual sounds clean. The explanation is simple. The sun withdrew, so must we. Doors slide shut with little push when the ceiling itself seems to lean. Call it a necessary omen, and the same dark becomes permission. Old debts are forgiven. A jubilee counts years backward and frees hands. The army waits to march until the bright returns, and the delay looks like wisdom. A treaty is sealed under the returning light, and both sides claim the sky signed first. Policy rides the tide of feeling. The temple provides the moon to move it. Yet not everyone agrees on which tale should win. Scribes who keep long lists know that eclipses follow rules, and rules can be quiet calculations become sharp tools. Predict the hour, and you can be standing in the right doorway with the right decree. Miss it, and your certainty cuts you instead. Authority loves awe, but it fears clocks that anyone can read. So the interpretations multiply. A queen cites the shadow to cleanse her court. A general cites the same to wait for rain. People split the difference. They light lamps and keep working, but they also listen for the bell that will tell them to hush. In the council chamber, the air cools. A servant lowers the wick, and the room darkens a step. Across the table, a bronze disc slides over a lamp to teach the plan. Here is your second key, meant to be held like a stone. Prediction is a ritual of reassurance. When the world fretted at edges mud, softening stairs, grain gambling on weather, rumors skipping like pebbles, the priests answered with timing. Not thunder, not spectacle. A schedule. Announce the hour, name the sign, and nerves untie themselves one knot at a time. A forecast was a lullaby with numbers inside it. Sirius will rise in 3 nights. Open the northern sluices on the 4th. The moon's first silver appears tomorrow. Begin the fast at sundown. The decan at the temple roof's corner lifts before midnight. Send the message then. People do not need omens to be kind. They need intervals they can trust. Bread is baked, roofs repaired, and quarrels postponed because a line has been drawn on the day. This is why secrecy clung to certain ceilings. The forbidden part was never the stars any child could point. The danger lived in the right to announce the meaning, and when, if I ring the bell, markets move. If you ring it first, they move for you. Calm, properly timed, becomes a currency. Even the tone mattered. Predictions were spoken like prayers, softened by long practice. A steady voice turns risk into work. Gather reeds today. Mend dikes tomorrow. Rest when the river swallows the last mark on the quay. The city learned to breathe in phrases. Anxiety still visited, but it found the doors latched by lists and lanterns. There were mistakes, of course, and proud hours when the sky refused the script. Yet the habit held: revise, correct, forgive the forecast that saved more than it spoiled. After the eclipse, after the flood, after the drift of the civil year, people returned to the benches to hear the next calm sentence. Hold this mindset close. Forecasting is craft, not oracle, and reassurance is the craft's true harvest. We will follow the thread to learn how the craft was taught, how memory was trained to carry stars. Like beads on a cord, footsteps echo ahead, patient and hollow, drawing us toward the priestly school. The school hides in plain sight behind a courtyard of quiet palms. Novices sweep at dawn, learning the first lesson without being told. Rhythm, a day that repeats, can carry one meaning and measure what cannot be named. By mid-morning they sit cross-legged while a senior scribe speaks names: Soptet, Decan, Nilamata, bright as pebbles. Vocabulary is the first gate. Say the names correctly, and the ceiling begins to talk. Say them carelessly, and it stays stone. Next come the diagrams. Wax tablets bloom with circles, boats, and braided lines. The teachers draw, pausing so the hand can memorize what the eye sees. A ram becomes a month. A snake becomes an ending folded into a beginning. A boat turns into a list of tasks. The drawings look like play, but each stroke is a wire that will carry current later. Silence hangs, heavy but kind. Questions are traded for gestures, a tap of the stylus, a lifted brow, a reversed line. Only after months of this do applications open like doors. Initiates are given false calendars and asked to find the flaw. They rehearsed eclipses. They time a prayer by counting decans that no longer rise. The lesson is careful skepticism. Nothing speaks unless it keeps speaking. A forecast must consent to be true tomorrow. Oaths sealed the learning. Students promised to keep meanings inside the walls until a name is called. Secrecy is not only reverence, it is economics. An open horizon serves the crowd. A guarded one feeds the keepers. Rivals are held outside with smiles and empty phrases. Yes, we watch the sky, they are told, and we will let you know when it matters. Over time the group becomes a family built on quiet. Meals are timed, jokes are soft, even laughter respects the intervals. What looks like calm is discipline, and what looks like humility is strategy. To control the first explanation is to control the first reaction, and purchase buys everything that follows. Taxes, weddings, marches, sleep. A linen veil lifts, and behind it sit small clay models waiting to be handled like living things. They learn the sky by touching it. A novice kneels with a carved board across their lap, fingertips finding grooves that map the river of stars. Each notch is a decan, each curve a boat's wake. The teacher guides a hand along Orion's belt, then up to the bright shoulder, then down to the heel that grazes the horizon. Names are recited softly, like counting beads. Remember, with the mouth. Confirm with the skin. Clay livers sit on a low shelf, smooth from many palms. Their surfaces are veined with tiny fields, each labeled with a god or sign. A student traces the pathways as if reading a town's streets, learning how a crease can echo an omen. Danger on the northern road. Caution near the ferries. Ask the river twice. It is not entrails that matter here, but the practice of partitioning how to take a whole fear and divide it until it can be answered. Starboards turn on wooden pegs. Ring within ring. The class rehearses risings the way musicians practice scales. At this setting, the teacher whispers, "What decan stands guard?" Hands rotate the disc until the proper spark aligns with the east. If a cloud hides it, what is the neighbor's cue? The answer comes by touch before speech. Precision becomes a kind of prayer. Beside them, the water clock keeps time with small silver sounds. Students mark decisions against its lip. 3 drops to light the wick, 7 to begin the chant, 9 to open the gate. A scribe checks the drip rate with a reed, smoothing the rim so the flow stays honest. Even patience is measured by night. They practice outside, boards set on their knees, counting along the real edge of the world. The city murmurs behind them. The river breathes like a sleeping animal. Lessons cross from tablet to sky and back again until the difference blurs. When they return to the hall, the floor feels steadier in the silence that follows. A water clock drips toward a decision. Certainty does not come free. It arrives with a receipt. At the temple gates, families queue with baskets tied in reed rope bread, warm beer damp through clay, a small bird wrapped in palm fiber. They are purchasing a day. Name the wedding hour, a mother asks, tipping dates into the steward's bowl. Tell us the safe week to move the house. A mason murmurs. The priests do not hurry. Quietly, they glance at starboards and water clocks, then toward the thin east where a decan will speak. The answer is priced in timing. Some payments are coin, predictable as moonrise. Others are favors that wait like seeds. A nephew placed in the granary, a patrol diverted from a noisy alley. A scribe's cousin invited to copy contracts where the candles burn late. Each certainty buys a thread in a larger net. People sleep better when their copper buys a time that fits. Rulers pay differently. Power lives in minds, so the high priest is called at dusk to whisper which week cools anger, which morning smooths the market. A coronation landing on the proper emblem feels inevitable. A campaign that sails at the blessed tide feels won. In return, gifts arrive heavy. Linen and copper, a cart of barley, a fish pond on loan. The temple grows round with reassurance, and with the obligations of those who sought it. But the trade cuts both ways. Mist floods and unkind alignments press questions into the walls. Fees harden into resentment. Favors become chains. When forecasts falter, the same streets that brought offerings send complaints. The priests answer with audits and adjustments, preserving trust by admitting error slowly, carefully, like lowering a lamp in wind. Ambiguity is not an accident, it is carpentry. The oracle's sentence is built to bear weight, a bridge whose arch holds whether the river runs high or low. Priests learn to braid meanings the way rope makers twist fibers. One strand favors caution, another invites courage, a third promises repair wherever the knot lands. A ruler listens, hears the strand he needs, and the city nods as if fate had chosen clarity. On the day the lion bows to the flood, safety walks the levee. If the waters are kind, officials praise prudence. If they rise too far, the same words reward quick dike work. If they fall short, safety becomes saving seed for lean months. The prophecy holds because it bends. Another, when the silent star speaks, close one door and open another. Which door? Which star? A council can decide and shout that the saying has been fulfilled. This practice is not mere trickery. The world's edge is frayed, and people need courage more than diagrams. A too-sharp promise breaks hearts when the sky swerves. A soft-edged vow gives room to act without shame. Still, vagueness can be a velvet glove over a locked chest. The speaker keeps the key. To be trusted, such language must be paired with work that is visibly steady, measuring water, paying wages, fixing the roof before the cloud arrives. So phrasing becomes an art of timing and escape. Hints are placed like verbs lean on weathered nouns. The cadence itself lulls panic into patience. If events contradict, the sentence has a smaller door hidden inside it, one that leads to not yet, or in a different way, or the sign was misunderstood. People learn to hear both the whisper and the margin notes. They bring their own wishes to complete the design, and in completing it, believe, somewhere between kindness and control, the line is drawn again. The scribe lifts his reed and trims a line to perfection. Sometimes the bravest thing a temple says is nothing. The ritual of delay is announced without fanfare. A lamp left unlit, a cord tied across the archive door, a steward moving through the courtyard with empty hands. People understand. Waiting, declared properly, becomes a verdict. Soldiers polish spears that will not leave their racks. The captain reads the notice aloud, no hour given, no emblem named, and the barracks exhales like a beast that has decided not to bark. Horses are fed and cooled, maps remain folded. The message is not, never, only not yet, the most powerful leash a city can wear. In the market, buyers hover near jars and do not lift the lids. A fishmonger keeps his baskets covered in wet reeds. A potter wipes dust from bowls already perfect and pretends the glaze still needs prayer. Credit pauses. Promises hover with their feet off the ground. If the temple does not announce the threshold, no one dares step across it. Rivals take the hint. Letters sit unsent on desks that smell of cedar. A petition is read backward, then sideways, then returned to its wooden sleeve. Silence spreads through alleys, gentle as cloth, and with it, a kind of safety. Haste is the city's most common injury. Delay applies the salve. Behind the veil, the priests are not idle. Water clocks are tested. Starboards are turned. Someone runs a fingertip along the lip of a nilometer and comes away wet. The council counts backwards and watches for the page where numbers cross zero. If they do not, the silence holds. If they do, drums and notices will pour out of the doors like a tide. The day shortens a shade. Sandals gather at the threshold. Somewhere deep in the temple, a gong sounds and the hall dismisses. The oath begins with the eyes. Witnesses look up through the temple's mouth to the narrow stripe of sky, where a familiar spark waits its turn. The priest names it not as a pet, but as a judge. By the third decan, he says, and by this stone that remembers, and a hush folds over the courtyard. To swear, here is to invite the ceiling into your promise. To tie your own breath to a wheel that will keep turning whether you keep your word or not. Hands rest on limestone, worn smooth by older vows. The stone is neutral, steady, incapable of friendship. You cannot beg a rock. The star is farther still, a keeper that never touches the ground. Together they make a pair of handcuffs no chainsmith can forge. If you lie, you do not merely offend a clerk, you insult the pattern that brings dawn, that rides the river up the stairs. The penalty is not lightning, it is dread. A broken oath breeds the feeling that doors close just a touch earlier, that canals bite harder, that a familiar star is suddenly late. Contracts echo the vow. Deliver barley when the second spark clears the roof. Speak truth as the lamp that marks Orion's heel is trimmed. If you miss the mark, the failure feels larger than a schedule. It sounds like dissonance against a chord the whole city hears. People pay their debts, not only for fear of court, but to sleep through the night without listening for a cosmic cough. Even rulers bow to this architecture. A decree signed under Sopdot wears armor. Rescind it, and you teach the crowd that the sky can be ignored, which no prudent crown attempts. Priests enforce less with soldiers than with alignment. The right hour opens mouths, the wrong one makes them taste Ashdot, so oaths gather weight. Star on one wrist, stone on the other, and a city moves carefully within their gravity. Torches lower as a name is spoken. Corridors narrow until the ceiling brushes your thoughts. Along the walls, niches hold lamps that have already learned the shape of sorrow. The scapegoat corridor begins here, not with symbols, but with a list. A scribe reads softly, failed floods, spoiled grain, quarrels that cracked like pots, fevers that took 2 brothers and left 1 bowl. Each misfortune becomes a pebble, named Wade, not to excuse it, but to lift it out of private rooms. Priests bring a bearer, sometimes a ram with dyed wool, sometimes a reed boat light enough for a child, sometimes a clay figure with a hollow chest. The city leans its troubles into that frame. Women press knots of hair into a basket. Men tie strings around small sticks, murmuring what they want carried away. Children stare with wide silence, learning that grief can move, that a load can be transferred if the hands agree. Painted marks climb the bearer's side, a rising ladder of what went wrong. One by one, the marks are touched with oil. The names are spoken again, quieter now, as if talking to a fever that has begun to sleep. The corridor teaches a simple arithmetic. A shared weight is lighter. A named weight is lighter still. A departing weight is almost air dot. The procession begins. The bearer is walked slowly toward the door bright with morning. No one steps in front. That would invite the burden to choose new shoulders. At the threshold, the lead priest whispers a last instruction to the world. Take this, and let the rest remain. Then the ram is sent beyond the gate. or the reed boat is set upon the current, or the clay figure is buried where the flood will smooth it flat. Silence follows, wide and careful. People breathe as if tasting the future for grit. The corridor opens into sun and color, into stalls and drums, and the space where relief becomes celebration, the festival square. Just ahead, here is your third key. The strongest blessing is sometimes a pause. Power wears many costumes, gold collars, heralds, seals, but the quiet hand that can say not yet moves more than any trumpet. A city can be steered without touching its oars if you hold the clock that decides when to push from shore. Watch the places where timing lives. A gatehouse where schedules gather like birds on a line. A counting room where water clocks blink one drop at a time. A priest's palm hovering above a drum, refusing the strike that would send soldiers into narrow streets. The veto is soft, but it is a wall. Merchants stop bidding, brides delay veils, rivals wilt on the vine because the hour has been left unnamed. No decree, only a missing bell. People call this prudence when it protects them, patience when it flatters them, obstruction when it belongs to someone else. Names or whether the instrument is the same, a pause that shapes outcomes. Kings understand this and keep timekeepers close. A sovereign who cannot restrain the hour is a passenger. One who can say not yet owns the riverbend. You can read this, too. Ask who keeps the calendars, who holds the keys to the archive, who touches the wick before dawn and decides whether the lantern wakes. Listen for sentences with air in them. Wait for the second spark. After the seventh drip, when the south wind loses its dust. These are switches disguised as courtesy. They open paths without writing laws. The crowd learns. Fishermen mend nets an extra day and avoid a storm. A courtier delays a plot and meets a kinder moon. Sometimes lives are saved by hours no one will ever count. Sometimes injustice hides behind the same curtain, and the pause is only a leash. So hold your discernment like a lamp. Notice whose calendars never leave their sleeves. Notice whose silences change plans. We step back beneath the carved ceiling now, where animals and boats are waiting like buttons on a console. One by one, we'll press them and listen together. The ram waits at the edge of the stone sky. Hooves set gaze forward, as if the ceiling itself were a field about to open. We are told this is only a picture of spring, but the priests read it as a calendar key and a test for kings. When the ram steps, ledgers wake, doors of granaries lift, tax baskets appear, officials polish their reeds. Beginnings are not innocent here. They arrive with horns. Those horns mean more than bravery. They arc like handles a ruler can grip, a promise that the season can be steered. In years when the ram aligns with the river's first confident swell, a coronation wears the glow of inevitability. Processions feel timed by weather itself. Barley heads rise, and so does the crown. People pay willingly when the ram walks with the flood. The tax feels like joining the current. But the ceiling allows for unease. If the ram's season comes early, and the water lags, the numbers grind. A ruler who hurries the horn risks leading into dust. If the water roars before the ram shows his face, authority stumbles after the harvest instead of ahead. The image offers comfort and a warning. Begin when the beginning has actually begun. Asterisk in the archive. Old oaths carry the ram's mark, inked where decisions start. On the day the ram clears the lintel levy, the measure, set the scales, fetch the seal. The animal speaks a grammar, first light, first levy, first law. Kings who honored that grammar were said to wear horns inward, keeping strength turned toward duty. Those who wore them outward bruised the city with needless rush. Look closely. Small attendants bring baskets to the ram's feet, grain, beer, counted fish. The pairing is deliberate. Leadership rises with contribution, not apart from it. The people's offerings curve toward the animal's shoulder like rivers, toward a delta. Accept, record, bless. Do not hoard. The torch passes and the horn gleams, a crescent of muscle and moon. Follow its curve with your eyes. See how it keeps turning, how the bright arc does not stop at the tip, but bends, patient and purposeful, into a serpent ring. At the center of the ceiling, a serpent closes its circle, tail in mouth, as if refusing to let a day spill. It is easy to see comfort. The year goes on, winter thaws, the river remembers its route, and our tables fill again. The ring promises nothing is wasted. Endings feed beginnings. but under it, you also feel the pinch of a loop. What restarts can also reset you. Farmers read the coil with practical eyes. If the ring tightens after a lean flood, last season repeats with fewer sacks, fewer hands. If it loosens after abundance, there is time to mend tools, to teach a child the dawn stars. The same emblem that blesses patience can also wipe the slate. A reset feels like mercy when barns are full. It feels like a test when they echo. Rulers read different risks. The circle grants continuity to the throne words, like forever seem natural when carved beside a loop. Yet a ring has no fixed top, and what seems eternal can turn. Old policies shed like skins. A new face wears the crown. Rebels study the same symbol and hear permission. If the world moves in cycles, then change is not treason. It is timing. Asterisk priests place the Ouroboros between figures of counting and figures of rule. It is a hinge. When records show drift, when the civil year strays from the star, the circle suggests a clean alignment. Add days, reset rights, begin again, but the ceiling keeps its caution. Resets cost. Memory must be promises restated. Names must stand a second weighing. Lantern light crawls along the scales, and the curve seems to breathe. In that pause, you can almost hear gears hidden behind the stars at work. Follow the body carefully. Its head holds history in its teeth. Its tail points toward a small, patient worker waiting at the threshold of mourning, a scarab poised beside the ring, ready to push the day dot at the edge of the serpent's ring. A small back shines like onyx. The scarab waits, forelegs tucked, as if listening for a cue beneath the stone. In Egypt it is Khepritha becoming one tasked with what seems impossible. Lift the sun from its night road and roll it across the day. No trumpet, no chariot, only a patient shove that makes morning. The hall listens in held breath. Priests loved this emblem, because it honors unseen labor. While palaces sleep, the underworld turns like a mill. The sun is unwrapped, warmed, and handed back to fields and faces. If yesterday ended in silt or sorrow, the beetle promises another try, not the same day repeated, but a new one hatched from the old, carrying a thin thread of memory through the dark. Farmers speak to Khepri in practical tones. Help us push, they whisper, and we will push too. Oars to the canal, hands to the plow, jars to the threshold. Children learn to spot the first warmth on temple walls and call it the beetle's ball. Perseverance gets a picture you can point to. Kings read it as counsel. Glory is loud at noon. Legitimacy is built at dawn. Begin before applause. Set the tax, the treaty, the hearing while the light is gentle. What is lifted quietly tends to stay. Look closely, and the scarab's shell holds a tiny disc, cradled like an egg. Between its legs, a narrow path runs west to easter. Reminder that darkness has corridors. Failures become fuel. Endings become leverage. The beetle asks, only rhythm, not heroics return to the task, and the sky will notice. Now forelegs rise. Elytra part. A hush passes as wings unfold, and the lifted disc seems to hover. Those wings widen, tracing a curve that opens into a zodiacal circle. Boats slide across the stone sky, as if the ceiling were a river, each bark carrying a small world of purpose. Priests called them the boats of millions, not for their number, but for the miles of hours they ferry. Dawn has a crew, noon another, sunset a third. Night keeps its own flotilla, lanterns cupped like seeds. To watch them is to watch a procession that runs the length of a day, then turns and rows back through the dark, repeating the route until memory learns it by heart. Every boat is a phase with oars. At the bow stands a god who knows the channel. Behind him wait helpers with tasks that read like instructions. Lift the disc, guard the helm, pour the libation, sing the course straight. The bark does not simply travel. It lists the steps that make travel possible. If one figure falters, the current lists. Ritual mirrors the crew. Lamps trimmed at the second station. Offerings set at the fourth. Judgments heard when the pilot's arm reaches the far mark on the rail. Governance takes notes from navigation. A city that steers well borrows the bark's habits. Crew named, duties clear, timing taught. A king becomes a captain who sails along appointments marked by stars and keystones. Grain moves when the aft oars bite. Messages launch when the lookout raises his hand. Silence falls when the priest at midships lowers his palm. The craft of rule is the craft of keeping the keel centered. Between boats are ripples carved so thin they almost vanish, reminding us that phases touch but do not blur. Noon promises night, night prepares dawn. Each deck hands the hour forward like a cup of water. The lantern completes another circuit, and a prow, edged like a crescent blade, turns toward the shore of signs. There, crouched with patient heat, waits a lion, mane flaring as if the sun had chosen a body. Nearby heat gathers in the lion's mane, until the air itself feels furred. This is the season when shade has weight and tempers thin like clay left too long in sun. The lion crouches on the stone sky with paws of noon, announcing the months when wheat cracks, jars, sweat, and the river smells metallic at dusk. Peak days arrive, not like guests, but like inspectors. Everything is tested: walls, wills, granaries, hearts. Priests read the lion as a hazard sign and a teacher. Courage is not raw, but restraint. Rituals tighten. Lids waxed, cellars aired at dawn only. Canal gates checked before the day pants. Children are told to walk in pairs along the levees. Bakers cool bread on reed mats. Potters pace kilns by decans to keep glaze from blistering. The city learns to bend before it breaks. Households hang lion charms near door lintels, a dare to fear and a reminder to swallow sparks. Married couples fast from quarrels for 3 nights at the height of the heat, offering silence the way others offer oil and appeasement, so tempers do not turn brushfire. In the fields, workers sing slower songs to stretch breath. Water is measured by cup and star. The lion also blesses guardianship. Judges schedule hearings at first light, to spare tongues the cruelty of noon. Watchmen receive rations of salt and shade. Oaths taken under the lion's eye carry the claws of stamina. Keep faith when sweat makes ink run. To step forward bravely here often means to step back from folly. To wait for evening when the world cools enough to listen. Lantern light licks the carved muzzle. The creature's gaze tilts from the scorched horizon to a single bright promise that rises just before dawn. Sirius, returning like a sip of water in a dry mouth. She rises before the world admits it is morning. A pin of white set just above the earth's lip. The priests call her the people whisper, Isisothis, the star who carries the river's news. When she appears after her long invisibility, the city feels the tug of a bell without hearing any sound. Doors open inward. Men test gates with the heels of their hands. Women count jars and touch the cords that hold their roofs to patience. The star is not merely pretty, she is a signature. Her heliacal rising seals the year like wax on a decree. Calendars take courage from her flicker. The civil ledger nods to the lunar month. Both bow to the bright witness in the east. A promise spoken under this light wears armor. A tax announced today can be borne. A truce offered now has spine. If a king kneels at this hour, dust on his palms looks like legitimacy, rather than theater. Fields listen. Seed that waits for Isisothis finds the ground kinder. Oars that dip after her signal bite a truer current. Miss the bell, miss the season. Grain does not forgive haste. The difference between hunger and surplus is sometimes the thin interval of a star's first breath. Above dark, statues of Isis cradle small boats and sheaves, and the message is steady. The mother of the river is also the midwife of time. In reliefs, a queen may wear the star upon her headdress, borrowing its punctual grace. In proclamations, scribes tuck the name into the margin. Under the appearing of let it be done. To undo such a line would be to quarrel with dawn itself. Not every year is kind, and the bright can arrive with warning as well as blessing. Still, the habit holds. Watch for the spark, align the hour, move together. One sign, perfectly placed, can organize a nation's breath. Our lantern drifts across the ceiling, leaving the faithful herald to her watch. We step from single signs toward the tangled grammar of the sky, from lone bells to complex conjunctions. Take one panel where meanings braid. A serpent loops itself around a bark. The boat's prow bites forward, but the coil restrains it. Above, the ram watches. Nearby, the lion's mane shivers with heat. 4 notes, 1 chord, reset, travel, leadership, danger. Read slowly. Each layer shifts the others by a shade. The serpent alone whispers restart accounts wiped clean. Timetables realigned, addictions to hurry forgiven. But wrapped around a boat, the loop adds friction. You may sail. yet only after checks are made, oars counted, offerings tallied, and yesterday's mistakes tied off. It is a restart with ballast. Now bring in the lion months. Heat pours onto decks, water must be rationed, tempers banked, cargo tarred against blistering noon. Delay becomes discipline rather than fear. Place the ram above, and decisions move from rumor to law. Leadership is on the clock, taxes levied, levies inspected, captains sworn to routes, written on wax. A voyage under the ram's eyes is not improvisation, it is policy, and the coil ensures the policy begins again rather than simply continues. Start here, says the image, but start wisely, hydrated, and accountable. When symbols overlap, their grammar multiplies. A fisherman might read, repair nets before departure, wait for the second spark, sail at dusk. A magistrate might hear, reissue the edict after review, collect lightly until the flood proves generous. A commander might see, hold, until provisions are secured. March at night, bring the oath book. The same sealing speaks to many crafts through the same knot. None of this requires a priest's voice, though a priest can sweeten the cadence. The stone invites you to practice decoding until you can feel how risk and permission weave. The image does not predict one future. It narrows the safe corridor through several asterisk. Think of the ceiling as a cockpit carved in stone. Each icon is a gauge, and together they settle into a dashboard. You can fly by in darkness. The ram does not shout alone. Beside it stand watermarks and grain baskets. The lion's heat, the serpent's reset, the barks with their checklists, the scarab's push. Priests learn to read these in clusters the way pilots scan instruments. Not one needle, but the harmony among them. Conjunctions become procedures. Ram plus rising water plus calm winds. Initiate levy schedule, crown rituals, open markets at dawn. Lion plus serpent plus boat with extra lashings. Delay departure, stock shade and jars, brief cruise on temper. Scarab aligned with decans 8 and 9, while sopdat glints at the margin. Begin sewing window. Ease collection. Keep healers ready. The trick is never a prophecy. It is an operating protocol. Checklists live everywhere up there. For priests, mirror polished, clypsidra tested, nilometer swept, chant assigned, seal prepared. For governors, barges inspected, granary doors tallied, couriers paced by 4 households, lids waxed, bread cooled, quarrels postponed. Each item echoes a sign so memory can carry it through noise. The magic, if you want that word, is redundancy. If one gauge lies, the others correct it. An anxious ruler might point at a single emblem to justify haste. A trained reader waits for 3 agreeing needles, and earns trust. The forbidden flavor enters only when someone monopolizes the panel and declares, "I alone see the lights." Stand beneath the vault and practice the scan. Let your eyes sweep left to right. Thresholds first, then cycles, then hazards, then permissions. Feel how the tableau answers practical questions: when to hire crews, when to close gates, when to forgive debts so the city breathes. The ceiling's beauty is the disguise around its utility. Dashboards travel well, designs copied, names translated, procedures rewritten. What began as boats and beasts becomes wheels and wings elsewhere, yet the habit survives. Read together, act together, calm together. Beyond this river, these dashboards sail toward new empires, and the night opens like a road. The sea carries a smell of ink into Alexandria, and the city answers with shelves. Here, Egyptian timing meets Greek curiosity at long tables where lamps sip oil until dawn. Scribes arrive with papyri from aproverbs, lions, decans, the bright return of serious while. Mathematicians inscribe triangles to tame wanderings of planets. Priests bring the habit of thresholds. Philosophers bring proofs. In the middle, merchants count days until ships and taxes touch the key. Syncretism doesn't fuse so much as braid. A temple steward who once trusted a mirror and a water clock now learns geometry of chords and arcs. A student raised on Kepler's quiet push studies how a circle can be sliced into degrees, minutes, seconds fine enough to catch a star before it slips. Myth keeps its pictures, math gives them calipers. The ram still opens ledgers, only now an ephemeris sits beside the grain tally, and both admit their debts to so pediet. Mystery schools formalize what courtyards taught by lantern. Initiates memorize an alphabet of heaven. Egyptian names paired with Greek letters, decans with rising times from latitude. Hand over hand, they turn starboards improved with pointers and scales. The teacher speaks softly, and the class learns that a good forecast is a chord played on many strings. Observatory notes, temple intervals, sailors' weather, farmers' patience. In this blend, authority multiplies. A king can claim Isis as patron and Euclid as witness. Decrees date themselves by heliacal, rising and quietly computed tables, spanning lifetimes. When the clocks disagree, reforms carry diagrams as well as hymns. Even caution gains method. Wait, not only for the second spark, but for the angle between moon and sun to fall within bounds. Copyists travel. A priest from Dender remarks corrections in the margin of a Greek text. A roads navigator sketches a nilometer beside a harbor. Ideas fold into each other like currents meeting at a mouth. The city hums with translation, as if the world were learning to keep time in two languages at once. A clerk lifts a sheet, papyrus thins to light, and, turning, becomes parchment at last. They begin as shadows inside chapels, men and women who know when to wait. Soon they are invited through quieter doors. The palace prefers new names, so the temple astrologer becomes a chronologer, a keeper of hours rather than destinies. He carries no incense, only tables and a habit of listening to thresholds. On the royal desk he lays a calendar that does not speak in flattery. It lists windows, 3 weeks for treaties, 2 nights for travel, a day whose noon should be avoided. Courtiers learn the new etiquette. You do not ask a chronologer for fate, you ask for timing. When will the river let barges pass the marsh mouth? Which dawn will make a proclamation sound inevitable instead of needy? He speaks in gentle negatives. Not yet, not this moon. Wait for the third Dickon. Refusal becomes counsel, and counsel becomes policy shaped by intervals. These advisors bring the temple's dashboard into velvet rooms. Lion months warn against long audiences. The ram nods to first levies. The serpent suggests resets wrapped as reforms. On parchment, lists bloomcheck gates, stock shade, announce tax by Soptit's witness. Seal read on the 4th drip of the clipsed. The king finds that calm grows where clocks agree. Some rulers keep the chronologer close, a lantern walking ahead of their sandals. Others keep 2, so that disagreement can be weighed, a hedge against certainty's price. Fees are heavy, but lighter than riots launched by mistimed decrees. A campaign delayed 1 week becomes a legend of prudence. A wedding moved at the last moment is praised as piety toward the stars. Silence remains part of the wage. The best advisors speak as if nothing remarkable has happened, only the right hour arriving. They leave by side stairs, their sandals patient, the way people walk who have seen tides rehearsing behind the sky. Behind them, bronze instruments wait on stands. Circles within circles polished to a dark honey dot. Rome understood that time could be staged like a play. Crowds moved as predictably as shadows when the sun reached certain stones, and emperors learned to place their wonders on those marks. Triumphs rolled into the city when fields smelled of new wheat. Horses glittered, laurel darkened in heat. At the right season, even dust looked like applause. Bread reached ovens on schedule, amphorae lined the docks, and a victory seemed as natural as ripening fruit. Games multiplied this harmony. Chariots flew while winds were kind, and the people cheered because they had eaten and slept. Anniversaries were braided with market days. Dedications leaned against festivals. Edicts appeared when river traffic was fat and tempers soft. Rome's genius was not only conquest but choreography, an empire taught to inhale and exhale on cue. Behind the pageantry, a table of signs waited in a senator's study. Auspices were tallied beside shipping timetables. The flight of birds shared a column with grain forecasts from Egypt. Aediles checked sewer levels and moon phases before promising spectacles. Quartermasters matched legions' marches to harvest cycles, so carts would find roads lined with fodder and towns ready to clap. When the calendar and the crowd walked in step, policy felt like providence. Missteps were remembered. A decree announced during sour weather, and thin markets bred jokes that lasted longer than statues. A triumph mistimed after a poor flood smelled forced, and the same crowds who adored parades learned to bar doors. So officials learned the Roman art of postponement. Not yet, said the augur and the accountant together. and a festival shifted by a fortnight became a masterstroke. The city loved the illusion that joy arrived. In truth, it was scheduled like a fleet, and every symbol knew its hour. A senator consults a table of omens. Shelves remember, even when cities forget. In one age, catalogues breathe in Alexandria. In another, smoke takes the breath away and leaves the air full of ash. We tell the story simply. A library burns. The truth is slower and less dramatic. Scrolls mildew in damp rooms. Ships sink with chests of books. A steward sells papyrus to pay soldiers. A mouse chooses a margin as dinner. Loss arrives by ordinary doors, yet learning walks around fallen stones and keeps going. Asterisk, what survives changes shape. An Egyptian table of risings is copied into Greek, then Latin, then Arabic. A diagram is redrawn with cleaner circles. A hymn's refrain becomes a formula under a neat line. Each translation shifts a weight from myth to math, or back again. Yet the timing craft persists like a melody played on new instruments. The ram still whispers begin. The lion warns of heat, and Sirius lifts the season's bell. Priests become chronologers, then court scholars, then star readers in market squares. Copyists are also editors. Errors creep, but so do repairs. A scribe in Rhodes adds a column for latitude. A physician in Antioch times a dose by decans while noting the moon's phase. A librarian in Pergamon stitches scraps of 2 broken scrolls into a single guide to eclipses. Where the record breaks, practice fills the gap. Farmers remember windows, sailors remember winds, and calendars are rebuilt from habit when ink fails. There is melancholy here, but not despair. Fire and fog cannot erase a discipline that lives in hands. Water clocks are repaired with new lips. Astrolabes are polished by grandchildren. The habit of waiting for the second spark continues, wherever grain must gamble on weather. Between ruins, the craft steps like a traveler over small streams. The old torches dim, pages turn brown and soft. Beyond the desert, in a cold room, a patient figure bends over a desk. A monk's candle replaces a temple torch. Stone walls hold the day like a cupped hand. In the cloister, time is shaped by bells that invite. Matins rinses the last stars from the sky. Loads loosens the gates. Prime warms the kitchens. Terce calls the fields. Sext lays tools down in the blaze of noon. Nun gathers breath. Vespers folds the light, and Compline hushes the corridors. Work and prayer braid so tightly that neither feels alone. Grain is counted to a chant. Ink dries while psalms walk the air like footsteps. The abbot's table is a calendar in wood. Wax markers slide between notches. A sanded board holds feast days like small islands in a river. Scribes keep the computist the art of finding Easter on sheets, like songs, golden numbers. Epochs, moons not the moon but its memory. Brothers learn the sequence by touch and tune, so a date becomes a chord. When the church door opens on the right morning, the village feels aligned to something mild and enormous. Nothing here is hurried, yet everything is exact. Seed loans are recorded with the hour of the bell. Travelers are given bread according to the season's lean or ease. Infirmary doses are poured at intervals that echo the night's decans in softened form. The monastery keeps the countryside's weather of mind calm by holding its hours like a lamp in fog, and warmth. Pages travel. A novice copies a ladder of instruction for new entrants. Silence, signs, service, study. Elsewhere, guilds borrow these scripts and tuck them behind shop doors, teaching patience as a craft secret. Signals, passwords, handshakes, echoes of older courtyards move into townhouses with their own soft bells. The brothers close the great book for night. Footsteps fade on stone. Somewhere beyond the gate, new fraternities lift the same rhythms and begin to whisper them forward. In the courts of the Renaissance, old sentences found new breath. As above, so below, stepped out of manuscripts into rooms where princes weighed weather against war. Patrons gathered magi as they gathered painters, asking for horoscopes and harbor forecasts in the same voice. The past, sifted through Arabic and Latin, returned as a cabinet of keys. Planetary tables, as translations of Hermes. Mathematicians charted the wandering lights with numbers that could be trusted at sea. A navigator set his quadrant against a star and felt a line from antiquity steady his hand. The language changed ephemerides, longitudes, declinations, but the habit was familiar. Find the threshold, time the crossing, Universities taught spheres while private studies taught correspondences. A courtier might hear both and carry them, intertwined. To a prince who loved results more than doctrine, merchants learned the tune quickly. Will moved on tides and saints' days. Spice caravans followed winds that answered the moon. Ledger margins filled with small stars and notes on river tempers. Ship before hold during the dog days. Unload when the first frost bends the grain. Profit was a patience game, and patience had borrowed constellations for its hour marks. The magus in silk and the accountant in ink shared a creed without naming it. Prediction calms and pays. Workshops timed furnace openings by decans, translated into clock minutes. Surgeons scheduled bleedings by sky and by bell. Even skeptics checked the almanac before buying wool against a harsh winter. What the temple once kept behind veils now traveled in letters, debated and revised, but always bent toward timing. Printing presses warmed rooms where candles had long cooled. Metal type clicked like small clocks, and pages poured out with tables, rising times, and prayers sewn between dates. Almanacs spread through ports and parishes, slipping into pockets and cupboards, carrying the old craft into kitchens and onto quays, where ordinary hands learned to read the year as a set of useful doors. Banners lift like slow waves, and a coronation walks down the spine of a city. Trumpets gleam, but it is the timing that does the heavy lifting. The day was chosen months ago, tucked between a saint's feast and a harvest fair, when streets are full and tempers soft. Coats of arms shimmer above the crowd. Lions, rams, stars, boat-sold bones under new costumes. People feel the tug of continuity without needing any lecture. The hour itself feels blessed, and so the crown seems to fit. Civic zodiacs hide in plain sight. Clock towers carry suns and moons. Courthouse floors hold mosaics of beasts. Bridges borrow constellations for their lampposts. Each symbol tells the same patient story the ceiling once told. Begin here, beware there, wait for this. Festivals cluster on the warm shoulder of the year. Parades follow rivers of grain. Pageants promise renewal when the first cool wind arrives. No one says Heliacal rising, yet storefronts change like obedient dickens, and markets open the ... City fathers understand theater as glue. A charter is read when morning bells are friendliest. A budget unveiled when ships crowd the quay. A treaty signed at dusk, so torches can turn necessity into wonder. Even the coats of arms carry checklists if you read them sideways. Lions for courage under heat. Rams for lawful beginnings. Stars for shared witness. The crowd reads it unconsciously and walks in step. There are misfires, and everyone remembers them. A parade in cold rain becomes a joke that will not dry. A ribbon cut during a shortage tastes like chalk. So the careful planners learn the old lesson in a modern tongue. Cycles plus thresholds equals power. Choose the week, the hour, the corner where the light flatters, and the city will help you speak. The banners fold. Applause thins into traffic. The frame dissolves, and beyond the square, a skyline of modern lights wakes like a second constellation. Here is your fifth key. The pattern outlives the pantheon. Names molt. The script remains. Rams became crowns. Isosothus, a star on a flag. Barks turned into processions with brass, and still the timing carries the crowd. You need no secret handshake to see it. Watch the rhythm. A city breathes in cycles. Leaders meet thresholds. Calm arrives on schedules that would feel at home beneath a painted ceiling. This is not a shadow play of hidden rulers. It is a public craft that survives because it works. Deities change because languages change. Empires trade, wardrobes, and faiths revise their hymns. But farmers still time sowing by a light at the horizon. Merchants still count on seasons to prime desire. Officials still deliver news when bell and weather soften the ear. The operating system keeps running even as the icons are replaced. The forbidden flavor belongs to monopolies on meaning. When one gate keeps the clock temple throne, platform descent feels like stepping into dark water. If only a few may say now or not yet, whole neighborhoods must wait for doors they could have opened themselves. The remedy isn't paranoia, it is literacy. Learn to read the dashboard for yourself. Scan the cluster. Is the cycle ripe? Is the threshold visible? Are hazards announced as well as hopes? When three needles agree, proceed. When they fight, wait. You already practice this in small ways. You pick a quiet morning to have a hard conversation. You launch a plan after paydays, not before. You skip a journey when heat is unkind and tempers are thin. These are ancient skills wearing everyday shoes. No priest is required, only attention and patience. So hold the key lightly. Continuity without fear. See the old bones under the new costumes, but don't chase phantoms. Timing is shared water, not private wine. Ask who rings the bell and why. Ask what other bells could serve as well. Then watch the street together, closely. We close the scroll and lift our heads. The ceiling fades into present night. Now we test the pattern in the world outside. Cities still build altars. They just call them avenues. From above, a capital lays out its beliefs in lines. Axes that carry parades like rivers. Circles that hold domes like moons cupped in stone. Obelisks, drawing noon through the public heart. We walk the geometry without thinking. Steps lengthen on the long approach. Voices hush at the widening plaza. Flags catch wind where the boulevard tells them to. Someone timed this, and the city obeys pleasure. At one end stands a dome, a patient sky you can touch. Speeches sound larger there, lifted by round walls that save every syllable. At the other end, an obelisk pins the day. Shadows crawl like slow hands, marking ceremonies with accuracy. Wreaths at 10, oath at noon, silence at 6. Between them, a mall becomes a processional river. Banners pour downstream. Drums measure distance. Cameras braid a million breaths into one audience. Bridges double as thresholds. Cross and you feel different. Citizen, mourner, witness. Memorial steps sink slightly so feet slow of their own accord, turning crowds into choreography. Even stoplights learn ritual, holding red for the extra beat that lets a column of uniforms pass. The map is a metronome, and the metronome sets policy's pace. Designers know seasons as well as angles. Inaugurations prefer crisp air. Remembrance prefers the hush of late autumn. Summer parades borrow long lights so speeches end in gold. Markets wake early on festival weeks. Transit widens its pulse. Food vendors bloom along axes as predictably as decans on the eastern rim. When calendars, weather, and streets agree, a nation feels its body knit. Stand at the center line at dusk. Notice how the last light selects facades, how pigeons circle like rehearsed extras, how fountains soften edges into welcome. The city gives you permission to believe for a few hours that order is natural. Then the microphones sleep softly, but the geometry remains, waiting for the next hush, the next cheer, the next carefully chosen hour. Across the boulevard, a news ticker begins to crawl, bright and restless, a serpent of light winding round the corner. Before we had clocks with faces, the night offered 36 gentle prompts. Today, the prompts blink as numbers. Metrics are our new decans, rising not on the horizon but on screens. Price indices, storm tracks, air quality scores, infection curves, polls. Each appears in its appointed window, every 40 minutes or hour, and whole cities take their cues without looking up. We still whisper now, only if, wait. But we say it with dashboards. Traders watch futures the way watchmen once watched stars. A pre-dawn release tilts a market. A surprise print glints like a sudden spark. At 6, an index clears the roofline and the floor hums to life. By 7, weather models revise landfall and trucks change routes as quietly as oars angled into a new current. At 8, a polling average nudges a speech from noon to dusk, because the crowd will be kinder then. We are timing ourselves with digits, but the habit is ancient. Watch a sequence, meet a threshold, act together. Most people do not love the numbers. They love the calm of knowing when. A teacher scans air readings before recess. A grocer orders greens after the freight index cools. A nurse checks a hospital census like a mariner testing wind. Each metric is a window. Together they make a hallway you can walk by feel. Beware the single needle. A lonely chart can shout and still be wrong. The old ceiling taught redundancy. Cross-check heat with humidity, prices with wages, polls with turnout, storms with soil. When 3 gauges lean the same way, proceed. When they disagree, the wise choose patience. Even silenced no update yet can be a verdict. A modern ritual of delay. On broadcasts the numbers arrive with music, crisp and rehearsed. Anchors rotate a screen like priests turning a starboard. Lines glow, arrows lift, and the studio lights soften to bed. Then, lower third, a countdown clock appears on screen, and the city leans forward together. Thursdays acquire a pulse, and cities learn to hold their breath on schedule. Reports do not simply arrive, they are escorted. At 8:30, numbers step through a narrow door, and before they appear, the world rehearses quiet. Traders mute jokes, delivery crews stall for a coffee, parents wait to send a message that might sound different after the line moves. Even traffic thins near government districts, as if cars knew to idle around thresholds. Calendars bunch like fruit on one branch. End of quarter statements, rate decisions, job counts, enrollment tallies clustered where symbolism helps them land. A holiday's eve adds dignity. A month's first morning offers a clean stage. A Friday late afternoon lowers the volume on bad news. The trick is old. Choose a time when the audience is kind, or distracted, or most awake. Silence becomes part of the liturgy. Blackout periods descend like curtains. Officials retreat from microphones. Journalists sit on facts under embargo, hands folded by trust and threat. The delay is called prudence, and sometimes it is. It prevents stampedes, lets scribes check sums, keeps one clumsy word from bruising a market. Other times, it is choreography, a breath held longer so the entrance feels inevitable. People internalize the tempo. Cafes serve early. Shipping docks stack pallets by guess and practice. Households delay a purchase until the bulletin names the tide. Anxiety is not panic here. It is a shared leaning forward, quiet and alert. When the hour strikes, sound returns, clatter, phones buzz, pigeons lift from courthouse steps. The city decides what the news means together, almost by reflex. Lights brighten. Briefcases pause mid-swing. Wrists check synchronized watches together. A carpet is vacuumed twice. Microphones are aligned in a row, and cables make tidy rivers across the floor. Cameras assemble at a podium that stays empty. Portents are now manufactured with craft, not conjured by chance. A trial balloon rises in a friendly column, floated as sources say, and the city tilts its head. If the wind is kind, poles nudge. Markets soften. The balloon becomes policy with a practiced smile. If the gust turns, the string is snipped, and the idea drifts away like a cloud no one remembers owning. The trick isn't deception, it's rehearsal in public. The chance to hear the echo before the bell is rung. Leaks work the same corridor from the other end. A draft memo finds sunlight at dusk, not because dusk is sloppy, but because dusk is forgiving. People go home. Tempers cool. By morning, a new paragraph has replaced the troublesome one, and the headline's teeth have been filed. Sometimes the leak is a warning shot, measuring who rallies and who retreats. Sometimes it's a favor for allies who need time to polish talking points. Timing games braid with narrative. Announcements that would bruise at noon land softly on holiday eves. A meeting moved to a storm day becomes invisible labor. An inquiry released after a heroic rescue reads like closure instead of critique. Campaigns stage small revelations on Tuesdays, steady enough to feed momentum, far enough from weekends to linger. The calendar becomes a tuning fork, and the story hums at the chosen pitch. Audiences are not helpless in this theater. You can read the cues, which outlet is chosen, which hour, which sequence of according to officials familiar with. Appears like footsteps leading to a door. Note, the rehearsal loops. Float, measure, revise, confirm. Gentle skepticism is a lantern. It lets you appreciate the choreography without mistaking it for fate. None of this is new. The ceiling taught the same habit with boats and beasts. Test, align, proceed. Only the materials have changed. 2 pixels. Courtyards to feeds. As night leans over the city, the old craft puts on a new jacket and steps into the glow. Push notifications flicker like stars. An eclipse used to be a drum in the sky. Now it's a drumline of headlines. In both ages, the darkening midday light gathers people into one breath. Priests once prepared the tale in advance. Close the gates. Keep the children near. Wait for the bright to return, and the city obeyed the rhythm. Today, producers cue packages, weather desks, polish paths, and explicable threads arrive like lanterns. The choreography feels different, but the instrument is the same. A shared pause that begs for meaning. Ancient rulers timed decrees to coincide with the returning sun, borrowing the relief that follows strangeness. Modern leaders adopt the cadence by proxy. A policy draft emerges as the first crescent reappears. A concession lands with the cheers. A difficult report releases under glasses held to the sky. Awe smooths sharp edges. Worry softens into watchfulness. The eclipse offers a neutral frame, and storytellers color inside it. Coverage patterns guide the mood. Live maps swell, voices lower, graphics dim the studio as if a candle were lit inside the lens. Look together, the anchor says without saying it. That togetherness steadies nerves but can also steer them. A looped clip of birds going silent hints at omen. A gentle tally of sunlight's return suggests resilience. The effect is cumulative. Segment, sidebar, push alert, recap. By dusk, the eclipse has become a parable that fits the day's needs. Skepticism needn't ruin wonder. Keep both. Enjoy the shadows theater. Also notice which messages hitch a ride. Ask, what action does this narrative make easy right now? Donate, postpone, forgive, forget. The ceiling's old counsel survives. Match the hour with care. And don't mistake the frame for the fate. The last broadcasts fade. Glasses are pocketed. On the screen, the feed quiets. We hear only a heartbeat dot. Sometimes the strongest sentence a podium speaks is none at all. Microphones wait like patient birds. The spokesperson smiles, then says, "No comment." The phrase is a lid. It fits tight. Doors that were about to open stay shut. Emails hover unsent. Fingers above keys like oars held just off the water. Markets pause between ticks. 1,000 meetings slide from today too soon. Institutions learn this tempo because time itself is a tool. A non-answer buys an hour for lawyers, a night for negotiators, a week for data to cool. It also loans power to rumor. In the hallway after the briefing, whispers braid themselves into ropes. Perhaps the numbers were worse. Perhaps a resignation is near. Perhaps the merger needs one more blessing from a cautious star. Silence keeps the corridor clear while the furniture is moved behind the wall. Not all quiet is evasion. There is the prudence of not harming an investigation, of protecting a patient, of letting emergency crews work without cameras tugging at their sleeves. But there is also strategy. Float a story, watch the reaction, then refuse to be pinned until the crowd leans the way the calendar prefers. No comment turns a city into listeners. Listeners turn into waiters. Waiters become predictable. Traders feel the weight first. Spreads widen by a hair. Hedges nudge. Algorithms step back like horses sensing a bridge. Reporters craft sentences with air inside them, built to survive the dark between quotes. Citizens improvise, delaying purchases, delaying judgments, delaying sleep. The effect is strangely calming, like a collective breath held under a pool's surface. Eyes open, watching light ripple above. Used well, silence prevents a stampede. Used poorly, it breeds one. The old ceiling would have recognized the gesture, a ritual of delay with electric lighting. The room exhales, chairs scrape, the podium stands empty, innocent as stone. Then the feed dims, colors soften, and the screen fades to a simple calendar view. Tonight, make a small dashboard of your own, not an app, just a quiet ritual. Before sleep, slow the scroll until the noise thins. Ask 3 soft questions of what remains. First, is this myth? A story meant to stir feeling, painted with heroes, villains, and a sudden moon. Second, is this method? A pattern with steps, measurements you could repeat tomorrow. Third, is this manipulation? A push wearing someone else's clock, sought gently. You're not a judge. You're a keeper of thresholds. Pick a handful of indicators you trust, as the elders chose to. A local forecast, a price you actually pay. 1 index for work, not 10. A health signal close to your life. Read them at the same hour each evening so drift shows itself. When they agree, you act with a calm hand. When they conflict, borrow the ritual of delay. Sleep on it. Most doors are kinder in daylight. Notice who sets the clock and who explains it. The one who publishes the schedule holds a lever. The one who tells the story turns it. Sometimes they are the same person. Sometimes they argue. Keep a small not yet for yourself. A pause no feed can steal. If a headline arrives, braided with urgency, check whether the urgency is yours or rented. Make room for repair. A list of thresholds you control. Stretch, call, cancel. Add 1 kindness you can time. Message sent at sunrise. Apology made before noon. News avoided after dusk. Give your room a cue. A lamp dimmed, a notebook open. A window cracked so night can be heard counting softly. Here is your sixth key. A countdown is not catastrophe. It is a handle. The numbers do not predict wreckage. They mark a door. Egypt learned this under ceilings that breathed with stars. When sand clocks thinned and water clocks cleared their throats, the city did not panic, it prepared. Close the sluices, lift the jars, move grain to higher floors, light lamps for the sick. Action, not omen, turned danger into weather that could be ridden. Priests kept the tone even. 3 nights, they would say, until the first spark. To 2 mend at the dikes, 1 to bless the boats. Then 0 and work began. The mystery remained, but fear had a job. Even eclipses were treated as duties. Keep fire, keep silence, share water, wait for the bright's return. Countdown meant a corridor of steps, walked together, that led back into day. You can keep the same posture now. When dashboards flash and anchors lower their voices, hear the invitation to pace yourself. Count not hours of doom, but turns of readiness. 3. Gather facts from more than one window. 2. Choose the smallest next deed you can finish. 1. Rest your breath so hands are useful. Then act, briefly and well. A crisis hates tidy work. Mystery does not vanish when steadiness arrives. The sky will always keep secrets. Rivers will surprise their own banks. Markets will faint, but thresholds are still gifts. They give shape to courage. They let neighbors coordinate without shouting. They keep leaders honest. And when the door closes with nothing terrible behind it, the same numbers turn into relief you can share like bread. Keep watch for those who sell countdowns as spectacles. A string of urgency with no handle attached is only noise. Seek the quiet kind, the ones paired with checklists, with room for mercy. Practice turning edge into entrance. So hold this key gently. Countdown does not summon disaster. It gathers attention at the moment attention is worth the most. Take a deep breath. Feel room grow wider with it. Lanterns, steady, footsteps, slow. And together we step into the vault of omens. Some years the river came shyly, as if embarrassed by its own thin wrists. The water rose a finger, then another, and stopped, leaving keys high and dry and reeds whispering apologies at last. Egypt did not break in those years. It tightened. Granaries breathed dust instead of cool, and the grainkeepers learned to walk with softer sandals so their footsteps wouldn't sound like promises they couldn't keep. Priests did not raise their voices. They shortened the bells between prayers and lengthened the pauses between markets. Mirrors waited at dawn as always, but announcements shifted. Not yet for festivals. Sooner for repairs. Quickly for the sealing of jars. The city learned to listen for negative space. The day a celebration moved. The hour a levy bent to mercy. The moment the ritual of delay became law. Families paced their hunger with dignity. Bread thinned but was not absent. Beer was watered. Stews welcomed herbs. Loan ledgers turned from iron to reed. Interest forgiven. Deadlines braided with decans, so no one missed them by accident. Fields received what they could seed, sown sparingly in alleys of damp earth, where shade held while canal crews carved small channels to persuade. Stubborn water into useful curves. Warnings softened into instructions. Judges heard more cases at sunrise when tempers cooled. Marriages stepped closer to the moon for thrift. Craftsmen mended nets and roofs to trade work for grain. Temples opened courtyards as shelters from heat and worry, offering lists instead of thunder. Draw from this bin first. Repair that gate. Send children with pots at the second spark. Share tools, share news, share shade. The sky did not relent on command, and rumors learned to keep their distance. When blame prowled the streets, oaths by star and stone turned arguments into work. Count, measure, distribute, return tomorrow. The ethics of warning meant telling the truth without burning it, naming the risk, pairing it with steps, and guarding the dignity of those who heard. Night gathered the city. Torches lowered. Water clocks kept their patient drip. Scribes tuned their reeds. In the archives, a tablet lists precaution rites. Alarms are medicine, and every medicine has a dose. Warn too little, and people step into deep water thinking it a puddle. Warn too much, and they stop hearing you, the way ears grow numb to a bell that never rests. The priests learned to aim between those cliffs. They watched faces as closely as stars, measuring what a courtyard could carry without cracking. Tone came first. A calm voice could move more grain than a shout. Prepare, not fear. Lists, not rumors. When the flood ran low, notices began with tasks you could finish before heat. Mend the dike. Sweep the Nilometer steps. Bring jars to shade. A warning linked to a deed felt like help. A warning without a handle became wind. Timing mattered as content. Announce scarcity at sunrise, when tempers are cool and hands empty. Announce mercy at dusk, when the city needs sleep. Hold back one step if a crowd is trembling. Take one step forward if complacency has set like silt. Ethics were not a chart but a balance, checked against Decan's doorways, and the breadth of the market. Truth was kept whole, but portioned. Numbers were shared in measures minds could lift. A finger's fall on the marker. A basket fewer per household. 3 days before the canal gate must close. Behind scenes, stewards compared notes, rehearsed questions, tested each phrase for dignity. A message that preserved self-respect, traveled farther and did less harm. Errors taught humility. A soft alarm that arrived late cost roofs and sleep. A hard alarm that proved needless cost trust. The city's tenderest store. After each season, scribes wrote what had worked and what had bruised. So next time the sound fit the hour. Some problems wanted clarity. Others needed a different tool. There were moments when exact words would have broken the vessel they meant to save. In those hours, the temple reached for vagueness, and re-examined a case of vagueness. The oracle spoke as if balancing a bowl of water. When the quiet star bows to the river, safety will walk the levee. When it lingers, wisdom will stay within the gates. No panic lived in the phrasing, only the sense that both paths had been expected. People listened and felt the ground hold. A baker heard, if the star bows, open early and stack loaves near the door. If it lingers, bake fewer, keep barley tight. A boatman heard, if it bows unmoor at dusk, unmark the posts. If it lingers, mend the net and sleep. The sentence stretched like a bridge, carrying feet whichever bank proved true. It offered preparation without the bruise of prediction. Priests taught the grammar of such lines. One verb for movement, one for stillness. A promise attached to each, neither ashamed to share the road. The oracle's craft was not to hide the truth, but to make space for both of its branches. Families could ready jars and also keep supper cheerful. Stewards tallied grain and also preserved dignity in the marketplace. The city leaned forward without leaning into dread. When the star finally appeared, in that thin hour before dawn. Some swore it dipped. Others swore the haze made it hover. Either reading fit the sentence. Either reading launched work. Crews set lanterns at the levee and carried sand. Neighbors checked cords on roofs, and then returned to quiet cups. The prophecy had transmuted outcome into action, and action into calm. Corridors learn the weight of breath when a city is afraid. The scapegoat right returns, not as cruelty, but as a safety valve shaped by care. Priests gather the streets, ache the way one collects embers into a brazier. A steward walks with a basket of reeds, a scribe with a tablet, children with twine. People are invited to place small tokens of what hurts, a knot of hair for grief, a cracked bead for debt, a feather for arguments that won't land. The lesson is gentle, and exact. Name the weight, set it down, let it move away. The bearer is chosen to carry without injury. Some years it is a ram with dyed wool and bells that ring like forgiveness. Other years it is a reed boat light as a breath, or a clay figure with a hollow belly that swallows whispers. The right's ethic is careful, no blow, no blood. The animal walks toward grass. The boat drifts toward current. The clay sleeps beneath silt. Harm stays outside the circle. Along the corridor, lamps bow in niches like witnesses. The list is read once more, voice low and even, so sorrow is acknowledged without being rehearsed. Priests touch each mark with oil, not to sanctify blame but to loosen it. Neighbors exchange glances that hold more mercy than words. Whatever dooms a city is seldom only a flood. Pressure breaks beams. This ritual is carpentry for spirits relieving stress, so wood does not split. At the gate, the bearer pauses, hands fall away. No one runs after to reclaim what was given. The crowd keeps a distance, learning restraint as a civic skill. Bells answered the evening birds. The basket is light. The corridor exhales. Now the city tests its balance. Stalls reopen, quarrels shrink to chores. A watchman redraws patrols with a softer line, and as dusk washes the walls with shade, the chosen bearer exits the gate, and day follows quietly behind. Some rescues arrive as calendars, not cavalry. Jubilee was a reset with a pulse of forgiveness scheduled like a tide, so the city could step from stones to boats without drowning. On appointed years, trumpets lifted, ledgers unpawned tools came home, debts thinned the way clouds do at first, wind, and families felt roofs grow lighter above their sleep. The right carried math as well as mercy. Forgiveness was not random. It was timed to sowing and flood, to markets with enough bread to absorb a pause. Stewards checked granaries and nilometers, then opened boxes of seals. A house lost to arrears returned at dawn. A field, leased under duress, snapped back like a reed released from a fist. Not every account vanished. Crafts needed prices. Caravans needed credit, but the weight shifted so the frame would not crack. Priests spoke softly, and rulers listened because Jubilee was practical as carpentry. Systems accumulate strain, calendars can relieve it. A forgiven debt turned enemies into neighbors. A freed worker steadied a key better than 3 guards. Temples lost offerings and gained order. The sky lent a rationale. Cycles close, circles feed themselves. Let money learn the same grammar. There were safeguards. Lists were read aloud so fraud blushed in daylight. Those who had lent grain during lean moons received rations from public stores. Those who hoarded paid in kind. The goal was not to punish wealth but to heal relationship. To keep the city a single boat with room to row. After the trumpets, quiet spread. Markets reopened with smaller margins and friendlier faces. Children fetched home the pot their mother had traded for time. A creditor slept easier too, knowing the board had been cleaned for the next game. Blame is a quick bridge when the river runs wild. In hungry years, officials pointed up and said the sky had turned its face. The constellations were to blame. The eclipse too long, the comet too near. Correlation is a generous liar. It hands you a thread and whispers it is rope. Priests with ledgers knew the difference between omen and cause. A low flood can start with distant rains, but harm worsens when sluices rot and dikes go unpatched. A riot can bloom under an unlucky star, yet it sprouts faster in a quarter where wages lag and grain is locked behind kind words. The ethics of warnings demanded a harder task. Name the weather, then name the hands that left the roof unmended. Elites preferred simpler tales. A court could rebadge mismanagement as bad stars, staging a ritual to shoo away guilt. Announce a scapegoat instead of a repair crew, and the city will clap for an hour before the crack returns. The cure is not contempt but better questions, asked calmly and often. What changed upstream? Who held the keys to the granary? Which schedule was missed? What work was delayed while speeches were made? If a sign is blamed, ask who profits from that. Meaning. Good reading keeps both lights on, the lamp of pattern and the lamp of cause. Yes, a strange sky can frighten markets. Also, ships still sail or stall because of docks and debt. Ask to see the lists, the timetables, the receipts. Trust those who pair omens with maintenance, who let numbers be checked by other numbers, who speak of repairs before punishments. This is not a modern trick, it is an old discipline. The ceiling taught it softly. Cycles, thresholds, actions. Beware the sentence that turns the cosmos into a shield for negligence. Our lamp moves, and the hall brightens. We lift our eyes, step lightly, and our lamp returns at last to the Zodiac ceiling. Begin with steady sentences. Name the risk, then the handles. River is 2 fingers below the marker. Heat index high afternoon. Expect slower deliveries through the south gate. Avoid thunder. Give windows instead. From dawn to the 3rd hour, move goods. From the 4th to the 7th, keep shade and water near. After sunset, reopen work that needs cool hands. Timers make fear smaller. Checklists calm the room. Doors, latch, not lock. Water, boil once. Store in shaded jars. Label, power. Charge tools now. Conserve at noon. Travel, pairs only. Routes posted. Return by second lamp. Health, medicines counted. Doses timed. Elders checked at the first decan, infants at the second. Work, roofs inspected, drains cleared, ladders tied. Each line is a promise that effort matters. Say what will continue. Markets open at first light. Bread lines form along the east wall. Couriers run until the heat rises to the lion's paw. Say what will pause. Licenses and hearings move to the cool days next week. People accept delay when it has a date and a reason. Speak to dignity. Neighbors share shade and news. Questions are welcome at the North Kiosk. No fines for late returns this window. Pair each restriction with relief. Open an extra well when you close a gate. Add a rest tent when you shorten a shift. Repeat the interval, not the threat. 3 mornings of careful work, 1 quiet midday. Review on the 4th. If conditions change, say how. If the marker climbs a finger, widen hours by 1. If it falls, switch to the second list posted. End with 1 small action anyone can take tonight. Fill 2 clean vessels. Set aside a pale cloth for shade. Text a check-in time. When readiness is ordinary, panic has nowhere to sit. The notice is read twice. Slowly, pens tap, sandals turn. The city moves with its breath unbroken. And as we leave the hall, we tip our lantern toward the ceiling for a final look at the serpent ring. Here is your 7th key. Thresholds are teachers. They arrive like firm hands on the shoulder, not to push you off the path, but to steady your step. A countdown is a lesson plan in disguise, inviting the city to breathe, to trade panic for choreography, to turn dread into work by hours. When the number reaches 0, the test is not terror. It is whether we kept our agency while we waited. Every alarm can be read as homework. What will you prepare, and with whom? Who will you check, and how will you make checking repeatable? The ancients learned to lace courage to routine, jars washed, lamps trimmed, gates inspected, oaths spoken without heat. We can do the same with our quieter tools lists on the fridge, a message to a neighbor, a budget that imagines lean water and fat, a calendar that keeps mercy in stock. Thresholds make communities audible. They cue singers who didn't know they were in a choir, the nurse starting early, the baker cooling bread, the clerk moving a deadline because heat has teeth. When we meet the hour together, we learn our shape. We discover who hoards and who shares, who delays for power and who delays for safety. The lesson isn't a scold, it's a map drawn by behavior. Keep your keys where crowds can reach them. Count from 3 with a tone that calms. Pair each warning with a handle. Reward good timing. Forgive honest misses. Replace rumor with intervals. And if someone tries to lock the clock, hoarding the right to say now or not yet, ask for the panel to be read aloud. With hands on the instruments, eyes on the markers. The forbidden fear was never the star. It was the thought that the sky could cancel us. It cannot. Thresholds do not erase agency. They clarify it. The ceiling only asks that we listen, then act with measured hands. Asterisk. So we gather the 7 keys and hold them like lanterns. The night opens its long aisle, and, very quietly, we return to the river again for our closing walk. The night breathes like a great animal, warm and steady, and the insects keep a soft clock we did not notice before. Sand cools underfoot as we cross the courtyard, and the torches, fewer now, whisper instead of brag. Above us waits the same patient ceiling we met at the startstone that learned the sky by heart, and it feels less like a picture and more like a friend who has been practicing silence for centuries. Asterisk. We do not rush. The air tastes of dust and resin. A moth taps once at the lantern glass, decides against fame, and drifts away. Columns hold their shadows the way elders hold stories, ready to share if asked gently. We stand in the center of the hall, and let the darkness settle until shapes emerge. A boat with its oars folded, a lion with noon still curled in his mane, a serpent making a circle that neither boasts nor apologizes. What changed is not the ceiling, it is the posture of our looking. We know now how cycles and thresholds speak when they stand together. The bark is not scenery, it is a checklist. The scarab is a promise that tomorrow is built by hands. Isis Sothis is a bell you hear with your eyes. Even the quiet between figures has a job. It is the place where waiting becomes wise. We listen for the city that once lived under this roof, the measured footsteps, the careful announcements, the relief of a plan that fits the dayond. We recognize its rhythm in our own lives, not as superstition, not as secret power, but as the steady craft of timing. What to carry is simple. Choose your gauges with care. Share your not yet when it helps. Keep mercy stocked like grain. Let thresholds teach. Let stories hold their shape without sharpening into fear. The lantern lowers. A gecko scurries like a moving comma along the wall. The ceiling seems to breathe with us. A long inhale, an honest exhale. We step forward once more, and, for the pleasure of it, let our fingertips trace the ram's horn one last time. Carry 3 gentle questions into the night. Hold them the way you'd hold a small lamp, close enough to see by, never so bright that they blind. First, who sets this clock? Look for the hand that chooses the hour. Publisher, platform, priest, planner. Schedules are levers. The one who rings the bell moves more than the bell. If you don't know who timed the announcement, assume the timing serves someone. Keep your pace until you do. Second, who interprets it? The clock says when, a voice says what it means. Are the voice and the bell the same? If so, listen for harmony and for pressure. If not, ask what each gains. Translate their claims into verbs. Delay, march, buy, forgive. Prefer interpreters who offer checklists over thunder. Trust the ones who accept being checked by other clocks. Third, what threshold does it serve? Every notice points to a door opening, closing, narrowing, widening. Ask what will be easier after this hour, and for whom. If the answer is only urgency, wait. If a real handle appears, tasks, windows, relief, step through with steady feet. Thresholds teach by turning fear into sequence. These questions are small enough for pockets, strong enough for storms. Use them at the window with the sky, at the sink with the radio on, in the quiet glow of a phone. They do not argue with wonder, they give it rails. You can ask them of yourself as well. Who set your morning? Who explains your worry? What door is your day aiming at? Adjust with kindness. Slide 1 meeting. Add 1 breath. Move 1 promise to the hour that will keep it. Let the questions echo lightly into the nave, tapping the columns like fingertips, counting time. The ceiling listens and answers in its old way. Cycles, thresholds, patience. Outside, night keeps its mild appointment with the river. Inside, the lamp warms your hand, and the 3 questions keep watch, without hurry. For you, choose a star you can see without looking up. It could be a breath you count, a glass of water by the sink, a stretch that lengthens the spine, a line you write before sleep. Name it quietly. This is my first light. It will rise at the edge of morning whether clouds permit or not, because the star is the cue you carry inside. Give it a simple orbit. When it appears, you act. When it hides, you rest. If the breath returns smooth, you open the day's smallest door. 1 email, 1 knot untied, 1 room aired. If the breath feels ragged, you roll the door closed and keep the lamp low. The ceiling of night approves either choice. Timing is mercy before it becomes momentum. Mark your window the way the elders watched the east. A cup placed upside down becomes right side up at dawn. A book left where morning finds it opens to the thread you promised to follow. A note on the kettle says, begin at the 2nd steam. You are building a heliacal rising from household things. When the star is late, do not chase it. Rest is a phase, not a failure. Scarcity of light invites gentler work. Sharpen a pencil, mend a seam, forgive yesterday. When the star shows again, greet it as you would a friend returning from a clear road. No interrogation. Only tell someone you trust about your star, so 2 horizons align. Or keep it private and let the quiet carry you. Either way, the world will learn your rhythm and soften around it. Now, in the hush, feel the small planet of your attention turn. Somewhere just beyond sleep, the scarab steadies its legs and rolls a bright bead across your mind's horizon. Slow, bright, and yours. Silence is not absence. It is a room made ready for breath. Reclaim it as care. Each night, mark a border where voices dim and your attention returns to its own house. The world will try to knock alerts with bright teeth, threads that promise revelation and deliver churn. Let them pass you by like caravans after the gate is closed. Timely silence keeps watch better than any headline. Choose small rituals that close the day gently. Turn the screen's light down 2 notches. Set the phone face down on a folded cloth. Write a final line that says, I did enough for today. Release the last scroll with a courteous bow. Not now. This is not refusal forever. It is an appointment with rest, the oldest medicine. Give your thresholds names so they can hold. Last cup, last lamp, last look at the sky. After that, no fresh storms enter. If a worry insists, convert it to a task and slide it onto tomorrow's dock. Pauses are bridges. They carry you, they do not trap you. Notice how your shoulders believe you when your hands keep the promise. Teach the room to be your ally. A dimmer switch becomes a teacher of dusk. A chair by the window becomes a listening post for quiet wind. Move the charger away from the bed. Keep a book within reach, whose sentences land like feathers. Let your pulse unlearn the news cycle and remember the moon. When messages spike late, ask who benefits from your open door. If it is not your health, your home, or a friend in need, it can wait. You are allowed to keep your night dot in the half-light. Breathe by count, slow and even. The ceiling fades into kind darkness. The insects resume their soft arithmetic. Somewhere, on a shelf in memory, a water clock slows to a whisper, and the drop that falls last is simply the one that tells you, sleep. Images are instruments. Treat them like tools you lay out before rest. What you look at last will choose the first color of morning. Curate the icons on your night table and your screen the way priests arranged lamps. For steadiness, not spectacle. A book with patient sentences, a photo that reminds you of hands you trust, a small plant learning the window's light. Let these be your household constellations. Remove talismans that churn, doom headlines, angry threads, flashing graphs. Each is a lion's paw at the door. They may be useful by day, but at night they train the pulse to sprint in place. Place them on a shelf called tomorrow. If they insist, give them a box, a note that says, I see you. I'll return at second light. Add counterweights. A card listing 3 thresholds you honor. Breathe, stretch, water. A symbol that means patience for you. A smooth stone, a seashell, a wooden bead. Choose images that show continuities rather than cliffs. River, path, orbit, bread. Your mind will follow their curves. Be deliberate with screens. Move the brightest icons away from your thumb's easy lane. Turn off badges that shout. Replace the lock screen with something that teaches pace. A moon's phases, a quiet calendar marked with days. Before sleep, open one window only, the one that carries you toward morning. Ritual makes the symbols work. Light the smallest lamp, lower it by count. Let the room learn your tempo. If a fearful image appears, shrank it with language. Not for night. If a kind one appears, keep it. This belongs. Let the last thing you see be chosen, not stumbled upon. A gentle picture sets the tide inside the ribs. You dim the lantern, and the serpent ring softens, its circle becoming a pillow for the dark. Take the ceiling with you, but not as a verdict. Read it the way sailors read, whether useful, open to surprise. The Zodiac is a dashboard, not a destiny. Dials whisper patterns, they do not seize the wheel. You pilot attention and timing. Attention is a rudder even on quiet nights. Begin with curiosity, not certainty. Let a symbol suggest a checklist. The ram asks for beginnings you can prove. The lion reminds you to pace heat and words. The serpent offers resets that cost and heal. If a sign seems to shout, ask for second witnesses. 3 agreeing lights make a corridor. 1 loud one is an echo. Asterisk hold a mystery like a horizon present. Steady, never quite possessed. Wonder keeps the mind soft enough to learn. Agency gives it shape. Choose what you will measure, and when. Decide which alarms earn your pulse. Practice small thresholds. 3 breaths before speaking. 2 beats before send. 1 night between urge and purchase. Calm is a sequence. Share your timing kindly. Tell a friend, not yet, when rushing would bruise them. Accept not yet when it protects you. Keep mercy on the calendar the way you keep due dates. Forgive with rhythm. Rest on purpose. When fear taps the glass, translate it into tasks. Check the window latch. Fill the jar. Text the neighbor. Sleep. If someone claims the sky cancelled your choices, step outside. Look up until the noise thins. The same stars that served crowns serve kitchens and fairies. They are public and patient. Their gift is coordination, not command. Use them to meet the hour. If they arrive late, Smelly remembered you could steer. Let the ceiling's animals become instruments. You lay down at dusk and pick up at dawn. Walk under them with the gentle alertness you've learned. The omens will keep their distant duties. You keep yours. Read without fear. Act without hurry. Leave room for light tonight. The river takes our reflection downstream. Here is the last key, the one that fits every door you've touched. Cycles, thresholds, choice. Cycles are the patient breath of the world, rising and falling, moon mending its silver, markets and moods with their tides. They do not command, they reveal. Read them and see where fabric creases, where effort slides and grips. Thresholds live at those creases. A star appears before dawn, a gauge crosses a mark, a bell names an hour. The threshold is not a prophecy, it is a permission slip. Step now, wait now, gather now, forgive now. It turns a season into a sentence you can answer. And then comes choice, the part no ceiling can carve. It is the hand that writes yes or not yet in the margin, the quiet instrument you carry through noise. Keep markets from renting your pulse, omens from stealing sleep, rumor from drafting your feet. Match your breath to a few steady lights and steer by them. Calmly. This is the unforbidden heart of the Zodiac. Shared patterns that help a city align, while each person sets their pace. No monopoly, no backstage spell, only craft. If someone tries to lock the clock, ask for the dashboard, read aloud. If fear arrives with drums, count instead 3 checks, 2 tasks, 1 pause. So the 8 keys fit together. Cycles plus thresholds equal power. Prediction is reassurance. Who says not yet holds a lever. Read icons as dashboards. The pattern outlives the pantheon. Countdown isn't catastrophe. Thresholds teach, and over it, choice. Carry them lightly. Hang them where your days begin. Let them open doors to steadier work, kinder timing, slower, calmer nights. And when the pictures fade, keep the grammar. Look, listen, act, rest, repeat. The lantern burns low. Stone softens to shadow. The temple's ceiling loosens its hold and becomes guidance, like a hand leaving your shoulder. Then carved animals dissolve, and the ceiling fades to the real sky above your window. Lie back. The night has made a roof of velvet over your breath, and the air smells faintly of stone and dusted reeds. The same stars that watched the Pharaohs keep their patience above you now, unhurried. They have seen cities come to the river with torches, then sleep. They have seen boats pull against the current and then drift home. They will keep watch while you let the day release its hold. Thought you have learned the grammar of their quiet. Cycles, thresholds, choice. The sky offers the rhythm. You decide the step. If numbers tick towards 0 somewhere far away, remember the key. A countdown is only a handle. Turn it gently. Close the shutters of attention, and set small things in order. Cup, book, breath. The rest can wait for light. Let the ceiling in your mind unfurl. The ram that begins. The serpent that resets. The scarab that lifts. The barks that list their tasks. The lion that teaches restraint. Isis Othis, who taps the horizon with silver. The layered scenes that braid warnings into wisdom. Carry them as instruments, not as orders. Their job is to keep you steady. Your job is to be kind with time. If worry knocks, lend it a ritual instead of a throne. Count 3 easy deeds for morning, 2 people to check, 1 courtesy to yourself. Then give the hour back to silence. The city can hum without you for a while. It knows your rhythm now. Outside, someone late to sleep taps a shutter. A dog sighs. The river turns in its bed. Above, the constellations hold their lanes like lanterns hung high along a road. They do not hurry you. They beckon, then wait. Close your eyes, as if lowering a lamp. Imagine sandals set neatly by the door. Papers stacked, lids aligned, thresholds kept. The universe is patient. You can be, too. Dawn will come like a hand on your shoulder, gentle and sure. Until then, let water sounds move softly at the edge of thought, and the call of a distant nightbird stitch the dark together. Rest.